So, you want ventriloquism, do ya? Alright, watch this.
Hey guys, welcome to Film Learnin, the show dedicated to learning some filmmaking and learning good. And here we are, it's season 6. We've been off for a week. I mean, not really. In fact, I made 7 videos last week. You should watch those by clicking here. Thanks. Now we do have some awesome stuff planned for this season. I'll be diving into Doctor Strange and Thor. In fact, the reason this place is so messy at the moment, I don't know if you can see, is because I've been busy filming a couple of shorts, and they are pretty complicated, so they need a little bit more work. So today I wanted to address a long overdue request by several of you, and it concerns my little buddy, Doug. Believe it or not, a whole bunch of you wanted a tutorial on how to operate a puppet, so that's what we're doing today. So let's get started. Now I want to start by saying that I have no puppeteer training whatsoever, so I'm speaking purely from my own experience here. I bought Doug here from an online store in South Australia, but you can actually buy him in various colours from sites like Amazon. Just look up Silly Monster Puppet and you're gonna find him. So my first bit of advice when integrating a puppet into your content is this. Your puppet needs to have an established personality. You need to decide how they speak, how they act. You basically have to treat them as another member of your crew. In fact, the reason I got Doug in the first place was to have someone else to interact with in my videos. And before I made my first short with him called Easter Stinks, I wrote a whole backstory for him and gave him this apathetic, kinda lazy personality. The backstory was pretty simple too. He was brought to life by Santa Claus farting on him accidentally, and while he's grateful for this, he has to live with the fact that a magic fart is the only reason he exists. It might sound stupid, but understanding who the puppet is helps a lot, not only with the performance, but in writing for them. The second most important thing is to get familiar with your puppet. You may have noticed Doug do little things like swallowing or frowning, and this is just a matter of moving your hand around in the puppet to see what expressions you can achieve. If I draw my fingers back, you can see it kind of looks like he purses his lips. So be sure and experiment with as many different hand gestures as you can to see what happens in the puppet's face. So establishing a voice for Doug really wasn't that hard. It was just a matter of just saying, okay, so he's apathetic, he's kind of lazy. I want him to have a voice that's a little bit dissimilar to mine, so I went with an American accent. Then I went with a slightly deeper version of my voice, which ends up sounding like this. Hey dude, do you know you've got your hand up my butt? The next thing is pretty obvious. Don't just face the camera or your actor when you're using the puppet. Get creative and try to emote through the puppet. You can do things like having them look away, or up or down, or rapid head movements. If they're angry, really exaggerate those movements of your hand. I also made the point of buying him clothes back in the day, and that was before Dexter was born. And it's actually kind of a funny story. I took him to the store and tried clothes on him in the baby department, and that must have looked super weird at the time. You know, a grown-ass man trying on baby clothes for a puppet, and I'm probably on some sort of watch list now. But now that Dexter is around, there is no shortage of clothes for Doug. Now one question you may ask is, how can you keep an eye on your performance when you're acting towards camera? You know, you've got the puppet in hand and you're trying to focus on that performance. Well, in my case, I connect my camera, the Panasonic GH4, wirelessly, and by using the Panasonic Image app, I can see what I'm doing in real time. I have a monitor right in front of me. In most cases, I don't even look at the puppet when I'm filming. I simply watch the monitor. That way I can see what the final performance is going to look like, all framed up and ready to go. Now, speaking of cameras, another question you may have is, how the hell do you film a puppet? Well, in most circumstances these days, I simply frame up the shot to not show the bottom of him. In some cases, I have shown him almost full frame, and that's just a matter of shooting his performance with a black cloth over my arm, shooting my side of the conversation with him sitting there as an eyeline reference just static, and then shooting a background plate. I'll then combine his performance and my performance in Premiere, making sure the timing's right, and then I'll grab that background plate and I'll mask myself out of the shot. Now I talk more about the process of this a bit more in an old Film Learnin episode on split screen compositing. You will find that in a card on either of these sites, guys. Now you may also notice that I framed Doug as sitting at a desk or looking at the computer. This also helps in making the puppetry easier, as he's in a static position and I don't have to animate his arms. Speaking of which, I don't really animate his arms much, and that's mainly out of necessity. As you can see here, his hands are just plush and they're not posable in any way, and his arms are moved around with these very awkward chrome rods. And if you've got one hand up his butt, you can really only operate one of these arms. I mean, like I said, I'm no puppet master, and I'm sure there's a method of doing both hands with these rods, but I like to avoid showing the rods as I'm trying to sell the illusion of a real character. From memory, I think there's only one instance I've ever shown the rods on camera, and that's my Mullet and Moe music video. Now, you can remove them digitally, but I found that it doesn't really work if the rods move in front of the puppet, so do be aware of that. Just make sure they move in front of your background plate. Now, you may have also seen a bunch of times where I have Doug holding, say, a phone or a gun or a tablet, and there's a trick of doing that. I'm just holding the object by pinching his hand and just holding it out of frame. Since his hands aren't posable, there's really no other way of doing this outside gluing it to his hand, and I'm not going to do that. Now, it might seem like an easy trick, but sometimes the easiest tricks work the best, guys. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in terms of making your puppet performance believable is pretty simple. You have to interact with it. This doesn't mean you have to be in the same shot all the time, but those shots really do help. And they aren't hard to set up. You've just got to make sure you shoot it on a tripod, locked off, and you make sure that both of you stick to your section of the frame. And say you do move into their part of the frame, well, you're going to have to rotoscope around that. Take this example from my short, The Greatest T-Shirt Ever Made. You can see that Doug is clearly animated in this shot, and I sit down on the couch and go past him. To achieve this, I shot Doug's side of the take, I shot my side of the take, and then I had to rotoscope me sitting down frame by frame to show that we were both in the frame together and interacting. Now, it was not fun to do this, but it also adds believability to the shot. And as far as the acting goes, if you script the lines for both actors in the scene, you just have to really imagine in your head what the puppet's saying and react to it. And then that's generally what I do. Or you could, and I know it's crazy, but have someone else operate the puppet if you have another friend or crew member. I mean, that would really help. Now, one thing I didn't mention that is kind of a downer, sometimes if you're trying to stay out of the shot or get the puppet in a certain position, it can get very uncomfortable or even painful. So do your best to be as comfy as possible, but just be aware, sometimes bringing a puppet to life hurts like a bastard. So that's really it, gang. The principles of animating a puppet for your short films or videos. Establish your puppet's personality and voice, dress them up, and explore what you can do by manipulating your hand, fine-tune how you emote with them, and make sure you frame them right in the shot. Well guys, for the first time in Season 6, that is my time. If you enjoyed the video, please smash that like button and share it up. And if you are new here, why not hit subscribe and make sure you turn those notifications on. We've also got 2 other episodes of Film Learnin right here. Our 60k short film competition award show will be up shortly. I'm just lining up some more guest presenters for that. My social media crap is above my head, guys. Post all the time. And until next episode rolls around, keep learning.